Thanks for joining us here at Rose Quartz Mediumship Podcast, where we simply adore anything and everything healing and metaphysically based. In my life, I spend a lot of time in divine masculine energy. As a mom, running a house with multiple children, I spend a lot of time creating structure, stability, protection. And then I own my own business. And so I spend a lot of time in structure, stability, protection, doing, producing, and communicating. And there are times where I've spent so much time in divine masculine energy that I simply don't want to be in my divine masculine anymore. And on one of those days where I was maxed in divine masculine energy, my husband and I went out to dinner. And as we were getting ready to go out, I said, "You're going to have to divine masculine me." And it's a phrase that I use with him when I don't want to make decisions for myself. I don't want to be in divine masculine energy. I don't want to pick. I don't want to decide. I don't want to lead. I don't want to create the structure or stability for myself. I simply want to be in divine feminine energy. And when I first started using that phrase with my husband, I would say, "Can you divine masculine me?" And he would know that I was asking him to make a decision, that I didn't want to make one for myself. And in the beginning, he'd get a little bit frustrated with me if I would ask him to divine masculine me. He would pick something, and then I would do the opposite. And he'd say, "Why did you bother asking me if you were just going to do the opposite?" And I would explain to him that sometimes when he made a decision, it gave me the space to realize how I felt about whatever it was that I was trying to make a decision about. So when I would say, "Can you divine masculine me?" he would pick between two options. And then as soon as he picked, I got really clear on how I felt about the choice that he had picked. And then sometimes I would just go with whatever choice it was that he had picked. And sometimes I would notice that that wasn't what I wanted. But having him create that structure for me allowed me to get really clear. And that clarity is what I needed in order to know how I felt about a particular dynamic or situation or option in my reality. And then sometimes I did not want to make any decision at all. And I literally just wanted him to pick. And I wasn't going to think or feel a way about him picking other than grateful that I was not the one picking. And so we went out to dinner one night, and I had told him, "You're going to divine masculine me tonight. I don't want to make decisions." And he nodded, picked the place we were going. And when we sat down and looked at the menus, I felt overwhelmed. I didn't want to pick for myself. And I stared at the menu for a while and noticed the way that I was engaging with the overwhelm. It was creating anxiety for me. My body got jittery. My mind got jittery. I started to go back and forth between different options, recognizing I did not want to make a choice for myself. And so after a couple of minutes of staring at the menu and feeling the overwhelm of simply making a choice about what I was going to order, I looked at him and said, "Can you divine masculine me?" And he said, "Yep." And when the waitress came over for the order, he ordered his meal and then he ordered mine. And watching the waitress was hilarious. She is a waitress who we've engaged with multiple times, and she stands very deeply in an empowered feminine place. And when he ordered for me, she narrowed her eyes, and I could watch the fight energy want to come out of her. And she looked at him with a level of disgust that was hilarious to me. And then she looked at me with curiosity about whether or not I was going to let him order for me. And I smiled back at her and said, "Thank you." And she kind of shook her head and put the order in. And my husband and I sat there and talked about it, about her reaction, because it was so blatant that we both got to observe it really clearly. And he said, "Wouldn't she die if she knew that you had just asked me to do this? That you just asked me to pick everything?" And I got thinking about how often I've been that woman who looked at somebody with judgment because I didn't know the story. I simply knew the situation that I was observing, but I knew nothing about the background. You see, she didn't know that I had been making decisions all day, all week, and I was exhausted of being in my divine masculine. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to make choices. I didn't want to lead. I wanted to be led. And that balance in my life is really important, because if I am always leading, then I never get the chance to be in flow. I never get the chance to be in divine feminine. And I create a lot of divine feminine energy and space for myself to be in divine feminine, which is an expression of divine masculine, right? I literally schedule it out in my day, in my week, in my month, in my year. And that stability, that structure, that protection of my balance is divine masculine energy. I'm creating the space for me to be in divine feminine. And it's a balance that's really, really important to me. And sometimes creating that looks like knowing when to simply let go and let someone else be completely in control. And so there are times where I say to my husband, "Can you divine masculine me?" And I mean it. It doesn't make me any less empowered as a female or in my feminine. It is what creates the balance for me to be more deeply in my feminine. And I know without a doubt that there have been versions of me who saw a woman being in her divine feminine, allowing a man to make the choices, and I judged her. I judged her because I didn't know the whole story. I judged her because I had a wound around the divine masculine and around the divine feminine. And it was really beautiful for me to be on the other end of that judgment. And instead of meeting her with judgment, I met her with empathy and compassion, because I had been her. I am her. We are all her. Just like we are all me. Just like we are all my husband. There will be times in every day, in every week, in every month, and every year where we desperately need someone else to create the structure, the stability, the protection, the leadership for us. And there will be times where we need to be led. I love to explain divine feminine and divine masculine energy as a water bottle and water. I always think about the divine masculine as the water bottle. It creates the stability, the structure, the protection, so that the water inside of the water bottle can flow. And the water is the divine feminine. We all carry divine feminine and divine masculine inside of us. And it's about creating the balance between the two so that we can feel the way that we want to feel in this human experience. And when we learn how to create that balance for ourselves, there is so much ease that comes with it. And so maybe take a moment and ask yourself, where in your life are you in balance with divine feminine and divine masculine? And where are you out of balance? And know that that can change from moment to moment and day to day. And learning to flow between the two. And purposefully be in one energy and then the other. And leveraging that energy inside of yourself will allow you to have better outcomes in your reality. If I had made the choice to try to be in my divine masculine that evening and make choices for myself, I would have been filled with anxiety. And it wouldn't have been a very fun experience. And simply asking my husband to hold that space, to hold that energy for me, allowed the evening to have so much flow and so much balance. And we had so much fun. I hope that wherever it is that this podcast is reaching you, that you are finding a delicious balance between divine feminine and divine masculine.